Hi, I'm Duncan, and in terms of internet moments that we look at here, if there's a story that could be boiled down into, you ought to cover up those ankles, young lady, usually it's not worth looking at. But this one is, because there's a twist. Specifically, I want to look at Sabrina Carpenter, and the modesty in question is less about what she's wearing and more so about her behavior. And we'll throw in some worrying trends about who is making these comments as well. It's a whole thing. Here's what we should know first. Sabrina Carpenter is a Disney Channel actress turned pop star who absolutely dominated the music industry in 2024, which cemented her as a mainstream personality in the public eye. And another relevant part of this discussion worth mentioning is that American culture is kind of cannibalizing itself right now. Happy New Year, but it's 2025. Those of us in real time don't need the reminding, but things all around us are feeling a little fascist-y, and that term is overused right now, but for a reason. There is a rising conservative approach to anything political, and everything is political. Believe me, I know that there are more pressing things we could be discussing over a celebrity's reputation and impact, but I also believe that these smaller stories are worth keeping track of because it might help us answer larger problems later on, because shit builds up. With that taken care of, in order to talk about the details of this story, we have to go over the general what happened to who and when. So, let's get into that. I would describe modesty policing as being critical or controlling of a separate party's behavior or clothing in terms of what is deemed appropriate. This is pretty much a human ritual. I think most societies have their own standard of like what appropriate is, and they try to, especially with younger people, try to shape them growing up into fitting that mold. This is nothing new. This is a centuries-old problem. Policing somebody's modesty is basically an American pastime. And how does being appropriate factor into the topic of Sabrina Carpenter? Well, this part is not going to be surprising to a lot of people, but if you're unaware, Sabrina Carpenter's songs are filled with lyrics that have double entendres and innuendos. Nothing is overtly explicit, and it's nothing considered off the rails for the pop genre, but still, it drew in a lot of attention from the crowd that likes to keep an eye on, edgy things. This led to the online discussion around some suggestive choreography recorded from her live performances she did while on tour. This served as evidence to the talking point of her not being a good example to the young girls in the audience. Before anything else, just right off the bat, I want to cut in here and say that I believe this is a non-issue. It's been her style, it's part of her brand, it's like an in-joke with her and her community. It's all very deliberate, but it is a fair statement for some people to hear this and say, that's too edgy for me. And that's okay because that's an opinion. My range for what is okay might not match yours, but that doesn't make one of us right over the other. It's up to you to decide what edgy means to you based on your own way to measure it. But you have to emphasize the opinion part of that being a personal opinion. But personal standards are going to be different from societal standards. And personally, I think it's overbearing to condemn someone else's choices as long as it's not hateful and isn't specifically hurting anyone. Saying, you can't wear a pink lace dress because I find that offensive, so you change. It's a little rigid for me. Relatively speaking, Sabrina Carpenter is kind of a new name on the scene because she blew up last year. If you're like me and you only knew her as the sister in Tall Girl, this might come as a shock to you. If you know nothing about this other than a lot of people are making noise about it, you would assume that, there's something there that would justify this kind of backlash. But if you were to then look at what is objectively being discussed here, you would quickly realize that there's no emergency. Again, Sabrina doesn't hide this theme to her music, and from what I've seen, she embraces the silliness of it, and it's not being treated as like a boundary-pushing, rebellious act. My point being, you can't become a fan of Sabrina Carpenter without at least picking up on this motif. There are some people responding to this like, as a lifelong fan, I am disgusted and surprised by her actions. And that would mean that they're not paying attention very well. And the counter that you would see to that is something like this. Well, she used to be an actress on the Disney Channel, and so her pre-existing fan base is younger. Or they were young back when she was an actress, which is a long time ago, so they've grown up now, but still. I don't want to say anything too controversial, but I believe that former Disney child actors should probably get a chance at giving themselves a rebrand once they grow up. God knows I'd want one. And whether that rebrand is handled well or not is up to them and their personal choices. You might Zendaya things, and you might Jake Paul things. I have an idea which is better, but either way, they're rebrands. And secondly, the kids' media that she was in is always going to be kids' media. Like, there's always going to be a new generation of kids who gets to see that. And I don't think that they're going to go in and edit her to be older. I know that this is a pointless discussion to have, because how are you going to argue with someone who thinks that child stars should remain child entertainers for the rest of their careers? How do you... That's just people being panicky. You're not going to reason with that, even though I pray that they used the brains I know they have. And yes, that probably means that the audience who viewed her acting work probably transitioned to witness her music too. And they're probably not at risk at, pardon the joke, being exposed to anything crazy here. But enough dancing around the details. We should actually watch these clips and see what's happening in them. We're not going to know if these are defendable unless we know exactly what's going on. So let's be objective and just see how bad this gets. Alright, the first example. She gets on her knees on stage and does this body roll. It's supposed to be seductive, it's said over a flirty line of dialogue. We get it. We know what this is. I think that this is one of those things where if you look too much into it, you'll see whatever you want to see. We all know what it's suggesting, but it's a 3-second dance move, and really that's all it has to be. And now we have clip number 2. She's looking up into the microphone while pulling her hair back, moving her hand. I think we all know what this is supposed to be. But maybe you should post in the comments what this is for all of us that don't know. You that don't know. No, if we're being serious, I don't think this crosses into explicit. If someone did this in a movie, it wouldn't constitute an R rating. It's more obvious and suggestive than the last one, for sure, but it's still just choreography in the show. Now, this last one is what people seem to agree is the most explicitly suggestive thing she does. Somebody carries her behind a curtain, and their silhouettes undress and act out her legs being spread. Now, I do see why this one in particular led to some reactions. It is a lot less subtle than the other ones. You're not watching these shadows and have no guesses with what they're doing in there. But go with me, I'm still gonna argue that this is relatively tame. After the spread, there's absolutely no movement or further implying, like they hit the pose and then freeze. And the whole reason they do this is an excuse to move into a set transition while it's dark and the lights are off. I hope I know what I'm talking about, but you remember when you'd see like a play in school, and in between scenes where the lights go down, it's not dark enough so you can still see the actors scurrying around or the stage tech wheeling in the props? That's basically what this is, and yes, I can imagine some pearl clutching to this specific one, but it's nothing inappropriate to the degree of demonic. And again, obviously, this line of thinking did not start with a modern celebrity like Sabrina. Basically, since we've had public figures, if a public figure wears anything less than a dress, it reliably spawns a congress of old people shaking their fingers and talking about the olden days and traditional values. The girls in my day knew to cover up. You know what I mean. And this part's important to recognize, but that camp might not have any personal information or stance on Sabrina Carpenter herself. They might not know anything about her. All they need to know is that she's a popular performer, and if in these clips she's doing something that they can already express their beliefs about, what's stopping them? But here's where we get to what makes this different, because this conversation is not only being led by old people shaking their fingers. They're in there, for sure, but some of these arguments are coming from a more younger and online portion of her fan base, which makes this not an old-timey belief, It's a now-timey belief. Anyone tracking generational trends will tell you that a significant portion of Gen Z are more restrictive in approaching any sexual topic. Many are vocal about saying that they don't want to see it in media, saying it distracts from the story, or it's just awkward, or it doesn't improve the characters, which I'm going to take 20 seconds as a film student and argue. No, I'm actually not going to do that. Why is this a thing? Well, a lot of people grew up on online content that was centered around boys be like, or all girls do this, which can't be good for a developing mind. And rightfully, objectification was being fought against, but it was never super specific, and it was never then getting into like what is acceptable, because it's easier to say no at something than say try this instead. And that's because what should be allowed is a personal stance, and it's not one that everyone is going to agree on. Like, there is a line to be drawn, but everyone's drawing it in different places. And the people who are exposed to that I gotta stop saying that. And the people who witnessed this while growing up, yeah, it makes sense that they're going to develop a little more reserved. But how an entire generation approaches this sort of thing is a little off topic. It's relevant, but, someone more qualified to talk about that. I bring this up to say, personal views can be personal views, but let's not pretend like this line of thinking isn't anchored to a much darker, more controlling agenda out there. And there are signs when this is not addressed, because elementary level audience sites like Drama Alert will react to this sort of thing as if a bomb has gone off. Sabrina Carpenter acts out oral sex mid-show, receiving backlash as a result. She is a former Disney Channel star, by the way. And the comments are full of people being like, she should be more responsible, or she can't act that way, and being all betrayed, as if Sabrina was the Earth icon of abstinence. But to contrast that, there is also a more reasonable side of this backlash. You have some people in their 20s and 30s saying that this was indicative of an industry standard for all women that Sabrina had to meet in order to be famous. Now, I'm not a woman or a famous celebrity, so I can't really speak to the societal pressures on display here, but from my position, I'm going to say that, this is close to something real, right? There are standards we expect from people that end up being gendered, especially with people and audiences. But any goodwill that argument might have gets twisted when it's phrased like this, because now it seems like it is commenting on the specific actress's choice to sell out. But in between the extreme and grounded arguments, you get something like this. This is what struck a chord with people. You guys are disgusting and weird for defending a literal weirdo. I'm 17 and afraid of Sabrina Carpenter when she's performing. You guys need help. Is this post sincere? I have no idea. There is no way of knowing for sure. But either way, the discourse kicked up by this discussion actually happened, and it had a lot of people participating. So, fake tweet or not, it started something real. And I think that warrants it being looked at, even if this argument being actually defended is a little worrying. Thankfully, the people piping up here who are worried on the fans' behalves were countered with ridicule from the legitimate fans. And yeah, from an objective approach, these people aren't babies. They can probably pick up on the theme of what's happening here. We even know that Sabrina herself is in on the joke because she posted about it becoming merch. So that was how we saw all of the fan adjacent or not fans sort of twisting this into a way of just expressing their own agenda, which is expected. It's not surprising. But I would regret it if I didn't also mention here at the end something that I think fed into this that's separate but not. A lot of people know this already, but it was publicly reported that Sabrina was in a relationship with the actor Barry Keoghan, but who all of us know him rather as, say it with me, Druig from the Eternals. But when they reportedly broke up, it only took a few days before Barry deactivated his social media and put out a statement asking people to stop flooding him with messages and DMs insulting his looks and critiquing his parenting. The post specifically calls out people showing up at his grandma's house or sitting outside wherever Barry's son was at the time and acting intimidating. So, threats. We can call that what it is. We're all grown-ups here. Those are threats. And obviously this should not need condemning because it's really embarrassing and it's a gross way to project your involvement into what is essentially two strangers in a relationship. But additionally, by people feeling the need to attack Barry on Sabrina's behalf, they're sort of enforcing the idea that she can't take care of herself. For alleged fans of Sabrina to butt in and basically take over for her, it's a sign that they're not really seeing her as the human she is. And I do think that ends up adding to the idea that she is someone who ideas are to be expressed through. And another piece of backhanded support you saw was accounts posting pictures of Sabrina usually modeling and saying things like, "How could Barry fumble her?" or "How do you pass on this?" And I get what they're trying to say here. I really don't think this is the best way of doing it. And yeah, these all sound like separate issues, but I do think they all sort of factor into the overall objectification of a public figure. I think the smaller offenses definitely make room for the larger ones, and I think people are not as objective as they like to say they are. So yeah, I think everything here is worth considering. But the main point that I've been trying to communicate with all this that I find interesting is that Sabrina Carpenter, clearly a pop star made to excel with Gen Z, is facing cultural backlash partially levied by that same demographic, and all based around her behavior being immodest, something I assumed was an antiquated critique. But that said, what do we take away from this? Here's what I think. Thank you for asking. We know objectively Sabrina Carpenter is extremely popular. Not because she's anti-establishment and edgy, but because she's a talented creator and a good musician. The popularity that she earned was from the creative side of things, and rightfully done so. And when someone, something, anything is popular, you are going to have people trying to use that attention to draw eyes towards their own messaging. Anything can be used as a delivery method for people to insert their own otherwise ignorable agendas to a greater mass of people. I bet you that there is at least one person out there in the world somewhere who is convinced that all blonde people are satanic and the reincarnation of the devil and sent from hell in order to torture people. At least one person believes that. Maybe more likely 5. And if that person posts their manifesto online with Sabrina Carpenter's name mentioned, the social media algorithm is going to recognize that name, say, "Oh, that's a trendy topic right now," and then suggest that post to other random users who've liked other tweets mentioning her. And now the Hell Blonde manifesto has more viewers than it ever would have gotten organically. So I would just recommend that you please pay attention to what people are talking about. Not in terms of just like a trendy entertainment drama way, but what are they exactly saying about a popular topic, and what's the subtext? And as tiny of a part of your life as it may seem, these ideas are linked to agendas and beliefs that will gladly take an inch if you offer them one. And that's really the point I wanted to make. Like, this can exist on its own. It can be news that goes in one ear and out the other. But you gotta recognize what is actually trying to be done here. And yeah, it can be about something a little darker than the backlash to some pop star on stage pretending to kiss her boyfriend while getting her hair done. It was a blowjob. It's about a blowjob. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it interesting. If you have anything else you want to add to it or expand on your own ideas, please do so in the comments. I'm genuinely interested in reading them. I only know what I think about this from my own perspective, so hearing what other people have to say, I think, will make this make more sense. I have been editing this video for a week and a half, which is way longer than I meant to, so I'm going to keep this short, also because I'm very tired. But any engagement you do with the video helps. You can become a patron for $1 and get your name here on the executive producers list of the video. I have more videos being worked on that will hopefully be out soon. And until you see me again, I hope everything goes well. Love you lots. Bye.